Hello, how are we doing today? We're looking at the crypto and the stock market, SP 500, NASDAQ. Where is the market heading today? Now, Pablo's back, obviously, on Treasure Island, and this has been a very eventful few weeks, as we have seen. So without further ado, let's dive straight into it. Basically, this is, if you remember my last long video, other than the one where I have with Brian, we were talking about, China and US relationship in the rocky next few years. Basically, we were mostly talking about the one from about 5 weeks ago. When the last CPI number just came out, we were talking about peak inflation. And I was saying 5 weeks ago, or at least 4.5, it was during the last CPI number, the one where it came out to be 9.1%, but the market, the SP 500 and especially Bitcoin actually went down to 18.8 and then rebounded back up to close at 20.3 area. I said this is peak inflation and we're going for a bounce. And we looked at these very important inflation peaks, because usually when you have an inflation peak, I'll just show you sometime from a different era. Say for example, inflation peaks here, right? Inflation peaks here, it goes down. This purple line's inflation, and you have a massive bull market, right? You have another, find another inflation peak, like say inflation kind of peaked here, right? Bottom came a little bit later, and then boom, massive, right? Bull market. But we can't compare to those years because then during more normal economic times, we need to look at, say, stagflation, which is kind of what's happening right now. And stagflation, we were comparing to the 70s. So basically now, if you guys remember, my last video from about 5 weeks ago was comparing at stagflation from the 70s. And we're looking at peak inflation there, and we look at 1970, and boom, that was a big bottom. 1974, that was a big bottom. And 1980, and that was also a big bottom. Now, none of this right now should be a surprise to anybody, because I've spoken about this 5 weeks ago in my video, and I said we are most likely, one day after the 9.1 CPI came out, one day later I said this is most likely peak inflation, we're going for a very big bounce. And that's exactly what we have seen since then, a very big bounce in both Bitcoin, stocks, and crypto. So basically, let's have a look at, wind's just picking up a little bit here, as you can see. Okay, we'll press on. I'll try to speak a little bit louder. Now, the worry for me was, will this be a slow fall inflation peak, or a fast fall? And I think because, see here, if you had a 1970. So here the inflation peaked here in 1969, December, but markets didn't bottom till April or May 1970. Why is that? Because the inflation was falling off very slowly. But however, when you have a fast fall inflation, like say 1974, markets just went right up, right? It made a double bottom. It bottomed just beforehand. It bottomed, say, 30th of September. This is the 30th of December. It bottomed, 9th of December. It bottomed 2 months beforehand, but then made a double bottom just to make sure, because inflation was increasing very slowly, and then it came down, and came down fast. And then again here, 1980. April 1980 picked the exact bottom, and the markets bounced. So which situation are we in right now? Well, as I've been saying, we shouldn't compare to before, in the the 1980s, 1990s, because those inflation numbers are not like 8%, which is where we are right now. Don't listen to Biden. When he says we have zero inflation, he's talking about this month. He's not talking about this year. Inflation is still pretty bad. It's like 8.5%. That's still pretty bad. Even if it goes down to 7%, that's still pretty bad. Remember, their target is 2%. So basically, we're going to compare with the stagflation of the 70s. So in the stagflation of the 70s, you have these big bounces, and during these big bounces, it's it's the bounces are smaller. First of all, we notice that the bounces are smaller, right? And second of all, we noticed that that you need it to be a fast fall inflation, right? Or else the market goes for a second dip, where it might come a few months after inflation peaks. So where are we now? Let's have a look. We are here right now. Let's see. Okay, so if you look at that, you would say, well, that's still pretty high inflation. That's still pretty high. When was the last time inflation was anywhere near here? This is when inflation was 5.6%, right? Now, basically, we've gone to 9.1, we've gone to 8.6, right? 8.5, sorry. And then we hope it's a fast fall off like this, and then markets would actually bounce a lot and might even take out the old high. The old high. That's entirely possible. It's just gone too parabolic right now. There's every chance it could pull back, right, or go sideways here. Now the thing is, part of the reason why it's gone parabolic is because it's a short squeeze as well. It's gone down a lot in a very short amount of time. U.S. economy is still kind of growing, adding more jobs, even though they're more part-time jobs. Oh, hold on one sec. And so basically, I think we're in a fast falling inflation, but let's check with the oil prices. Oil, as I have been saying, needs to confirm below this, $98, $100 area, right? It's basically just bouncing off here and, teasing us. So we're not sure yet. Some people would have called that a breakdown. But is it possible that it could just hang around here and then make a comeback? Because there are two trend lines you can draw. If you were to just look across, you could see that this area at about 98 is major support line, and oil has broken that, right? Oil has broken that. It goes all the way back to 10 years ago, and oil has broken that, right? And made a weekly close beneath, but see how this week it's actually closed just on the edge. But there's another trend line we can look at. And by the way, we can see that this purple line is inflation. We can see that this is bar chart is oil prices. You can see how basically they track pretty closely to each other. But however, if we were to say draw a trend line here on oil prices, we'd find that there's probably a little bit of support around 95. This is a really strong support, and if oil breaking that means oil is headed down. But what if it bounces on this support trend line here at 94, 95, and give us one or two more bounces, like maybe to about 110, 120 again, and hold it into later third quarter this year, first quarter 2023? Then inflation might not go down so fast. Inflation might get stuck around 7%, around 8%. Then could we have a double dip? These are the risks in the market. So my thinking is not to chase the market right now. It'll either go sideways or pull back. Because if you look at the SPY, it's coming very close to this is the SP 500, by the way. It's coming very close to the top of this channel, right? There's every chance we do a little pullback or sideways, depending on how oil prices go, and then maybe break through. In general, I'm still leaning bullish, but and you might remember another reason why I was leaning bullish was looking at the US 10-year yield, the US 10. Let's see. And Warren Buffett calls this gravity. So US 10-year yield, as I have been saying in my videos, I have been saying in my Discord. Oh, by the way, this video goes to my Discord first, as always, and then after about 2 days, I put it out on social media for free public viewing. And quite often people don't get it, and they're like, "Oh, you didn't call this in time. You didn't predict this in time." Well, yeah, maybe I did. And everyone in my Discord, thousands of people in my Discord saw it 2 days before it went public. Okay. Anyways, I'm grateful to people in my Discord because they've stuck with me when my prediction for 20K Bitcoin didn't come true for a few months. And I don't get it all right, but at least I'm the guy who said it's going to 20K and to 17K and can go even lower. Anyways, so basically, let's look at the 10-year Treasury yield here. This 2.75 here is obviously a key support area. It's bounced a number of times and then it closed twice below, and actually this close took out the low point here. So I consider that confirmed. So I said it's going to 2%, but it confirmed back up again. So it's playing a lot of games there. It can't decide which way yields are going to go. Well, I guess that makes sense because you know, we're seeing the exact same thing happening on oil. Oil's breaking down, and then oil's climbing back up again. Oil can't decide whether it wants to break down from that high 90s, 95 to 98 area. And so the 10-year Treasury yield can't decide whether it's going down or not either. So basically, that's something I would watch. If this came for another bounce to even 3.2, 3.3, and then went down, I do expect it to break down. I do expect the bull market to continue. But that doesn't mean in the next 2 to 3 weeks, we won't have a pullback or the market's going sideways. If, say, for example, this can do a head and shoulders pattern, the 10-year yield, shoulder, head, it might come up for a shoulder to around here for symmetry, just for symmetry, 3.2, and then come down. So if it does that over the next, until the end of August, early September, it would, in the next 2 weeks, it would basically take the tech stocks, especially SP 500, but especially the tech stocks, down a lot. Not a new low, definitely not a new low, but say QQQ could come a fair bit lower. So I don't know, QQQ might go to its good old place of 298, about 298, something like that. If the SP 500, if the US 10-year Treasury yield is to do that, then basically QQQ would come back and retrace to about, I'm looking at 298 area. That's a NASDAQ ETF. It's essentially representative of what the NASDAQ does. So overall, I would say I am still mostly leaning bullish. And if you want to know the reason why, there was much more in-depth analysis in my previous video that explained basically where the market is going, what a peak inflation is, and why we're experiencing something called peak inflation. So now this one is just more of an update, and thank you for your time. I'll catch you guys next time. This is Pablo He-Man coming to you from Treasure Island.